it's not a question if you're coming in with an understanding, but you really need to demonstrate your application of AI in work because that's going to be now an expected work skill that I know many of the community colleges are now embedding into their pedagogy because they understand that that work skill and that workforce development side of being AI ready and AI literate is so important in showing that return on investment in a higher education.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday, I'll break down what actually matters, fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. On today's episode, what happens when your newest team member never sleeps, works weekends, and doesn't even have a desk? Higher Ed is getting AI coworkers, and they're not just taking notes in meetings. They're taking on real tasks, from answering financial aid questions to running campus parking. So, are we building the future of student support, or are we just outsourcing it to the machines? Joining me today is someone who's been shaping student experiences long before AI was in the picture, and now he's helping lead the charge into what's next. Dr. Ed Cabellon is the interim senior vice president for student affairs at Montgomery College and soon to be interim vice president for student experience at Frederick Community College, where he'll oversee student affairs and enrollment management. Ed has held leadership roles at both 2- and 4-year institutions, earned his doctorate studying how digital tech is transforming student affairs, and has spent decades building student-centered systems that scale. He's a collaborative strategist and a digital native in student affairs, and today he's here to help us figure out what it really means to share the office with AI agents. Ed, welcome to the Pulse. First off, congrats on this new role at Frederick. I think you're starting in just a couple months. So, new gig, new title. What does this mean? New office plant, new bookshelf? What's your first week ritual?
Yeah, absolutely, Mallory. First, thanks for the invite. It's nice to be back with you and sharing space in digital spaces. It's fun to be reconnected. So thank you. I'm excited to be joining the Frederick Community College community in June. So yeah, and first, yeah, new plans probably. Taking my walks around and whether it's in person or digitally or both, getting to know the community. So super excited for the opportunity and, just I'm happy to be here. So thanks for the invitation again.
That's terrific. Now, listeners may or may not know you and I go way back to the days of Higher Ed Live. We're part of that fam. It was the podcast before podcasting was cool. So it's fun to have you, Ed, back on the mic because I don't know that we ever shared the microphone during those Higher Ed Live days.
No, because I was focused on the student affairs
That's
live
right.
portion, and sharing that space with many outstanding folks. So I am happy to say I'm still well connected to today, given my time in student affairs and enrollment. So it's weird. It's wild thinking about what's happening now and equating it back to when we were, leveraging social media and digital and mobile applications
That's
and mobile
right.
phones and just this wild, wild west of utilizing technology in ways that the academy had never really thought about, or maybe had thought about, but really was, dipping their toes in a little bit. But certainly think that social media, created those spaces for us to explore and to try, and all importantly, connect with students on.
Well, and you've always been a pioneer in this space. I mean, let alone you have a doctorate in this area. So I really couldn't think of a better guest to tackle this agentic AI topic with because you are someone who I have always felt is about 4 steps ahead when it comes to anything related to digital and the student experience. So, listeners, let's dive in. I'm going to give you the quick hit overview. You know, you can always find the links in the show notes if you want to dig into the articles. But let me set the scene for you today. On April 15th, Shopify's CEO sent an internal memo to his staff declaring that before employees can ask for new hires or additional resources for their teams, they now have to prove that AI cannot do the job first. So let that sink in, friends. The default assumption is that your next team member might not be human. And while that might sound like some startup drama, it is a mindset shift that's already creeping into higher ed, especially on the administrative side. And the power of AI agents was on full display at the recent ASU GSV Summit in San Diego. Companies like Element 451 and Learning Genie debuted and demoed their AI agents for attendees. Now, we're not just talking about chatbots answering FAQs or taking notes in Zoom meetings. We're talking about AI agents who don't just assist, they act, and they're already embedded on campuses. At Unity Environmental University, there's an agent named Una handling admission conversations and matching students to academic programs, all without a human in the loop. At Arizona State University, Parky is the AI that manages parking services from end to end, everything from permits, citations, and appeals. It's all automated. And at Georgia State, there's an agent called Pounce who sends financial aid nudges that have helped reduce summer melt by more than 20% for the university. Friends, these are real agents. They're working right now. And these are all tasks that used to be on a human's desk. Agentic AI is a step beyond automation. These systems take initiative, personalize responses, collaborate across platforms, and they can even hand off work to each other. So I think the pitch is clear, Ed. It's 24/7 service, lower costs, faster resolution, less burnout for our humans. And I don't know who's going to say no to these things, but I think the question isn't if higher ed is bringing on AI coworkers, it's how fast and how far we're willing to go. So, Ed, let's unpack all of this. You have, as we've established, worked in student affairs long enough to see a lot of big digital shifts. But to me, this feels different. We know that burnout and staff shortages are very real. And now we have these AI agents that are showing up to take on some of that work. Do you think that they will actually lighten the load for us mere humans? Or are we just going to shift that burden onto something else?
So I just think this whole notion of agentic AI coworkers is fascinating because I don't think initially it will lighten our load. In fact, I think it will actually add work to our teams because of the amount of trainings, the monitoring. And when I say train, I think there's also retraining opportunities for folks to rethink the business processes that are underpinning the actual technology that it's supporting. You know, I've seen a lot of folks have to go through this audit of their own websites to make sure that if the bot is tapping into that. And it also raises for me this idea of how good is our own local data, right? So if a bot is leveraging campus resources, a few years ago when I was at Curry and we were bringing on an AI chatbot, we had folks, filling in a knowledge base based on what they had for information. And we learned as part of that process, some of the information was different than what was even published on our website. And so
Wow.
I think there's going to need to be work done, which is extra work, given everything else that's going on. If folks really want to bring in these agents, they have to do some looking in the mirror, if you will, to say, well, how good are our business processes and all of our information for the bot to leverage to be that, bestie coworker, AI bestie, that is there to help us with some of these tasks that students are looking for 24/7 access on demand when they want that engagement.
So there is a great cartoon that I have seen so many times over the last few years. I've even referenced it on this podcast before, but let's all close our eyes and imagine a cart that is being pulled by humans, but that cart has square wheels. And somebody is standing behind that cart holding four round wheels and saying, "Hey, here you go." And the person pulling the cart says, "No, that's too much work. Can't you see? I'm trying to lug this cart over there." Right. So to me, that really crystallizes what you just said in terms of yes, there is still work that needs to be done. Somebody has to go and change out the square wheels for the round ones. But what I love about this metaphor is we can all very easily understand once those round wheels are on the cart, you can sprint four times farther than you were ever going to get when you were lugging that cart with square wheels.
Agreed. And there's going to be a time where, because change happens so much slower in higher education, as we know, I just think it's going to take some folks in senior leadership roles to set the pace for that
Yes.
change and to roll it out in collaboration with faculty, with staff, and with students, of course, to really understand the impact that this can have long term. To say, look, this is a vision in 3 to 5 years. I know the technology will continue to evolve and get smarter and be even more impactful as it gets smarter and understands more of who our students are and our own institutional processes and culture. But I think even if we were able to say that this change, what will this change allow for? And I think if that is the focus, with students at the center always and their success and helping them not only enroll at the college more easily, but progress and get through to graduation, I think that's where you'll get more buy-in, when you can show those gains.
Yeah. So, okay. So, words out of your own mouth. Like the onus is on you, Ed. It's on the leaders to kind of bring this from the top down. So, tell me in your various roles, because you were an early pioneer of utilizing AI at Curry. So, what have you seen within the student affairs teams that you've managed or just out in the wild? How are they actually starting to use AI today? And, where do you think it is actually headed in our somewhat slow moving industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Mallory so much over the last, even this last academic year. Most of the professional development sessions at conferences and at, whether it's local or national, are talking about AI and this idea that it's time that we start talking about, come out from the shadows, folks. It's okay that you can say that you actually use these tools in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form. Whether it's, because folks, I think, we're feeling a bit of, not shame, but that they were also cheating at work by using these tools, when faculty initially were saying, beating the drum, saying, we want to make sure we embed some AI, readers in our online platforms to make sure that the work is authentically students and not completely developed by AI, which is absolutely understandable. But I think now student affairs folks are exploring the not necessarily the agentic side yet. I think this is going to be very, very new as people listen to this, because given what's occurred over the last year, I mean, you're seeing new tools like Manus pop up, where it's now this agent that will allow it to do these deep research projects. Now Gemini's, it has deep research, as well as ChatGPT, to do more of that, not quick response, but really thoughtful responses. So I've seen folks use it, as I think you've called out, in terms of chatbots, in terms of leveraging it for their own editing and writing capability, idea generation. But now that it's so like 1.0 or even 0.0, that there's other ways for us to use it. I think where there's opportunities, I will say, and that I'm hoping that folks will start to grasp onto, would be looking at admissions and financial aid, and how might we speed up our responses and thoughtfulness, not just because the knowledge base says so, but because we've taken into account who that student is. I think that personalized response that an agent can get to at some point, given the right data and given the right understanding and contextual pieces, would be important. I also think that from an advising perspective, academic advising is one of those areas that I know many institutions struggle with scaling. And so how might we leverage agentic AIs in as a coworker bestie with related to advising, especially around the times of class registration and spending more time developing relationships with students, which is where we want our advisors to go. That's where students feel a sense of community and belonging. And I think finally looking at ways that agentic AI could help us keep tabs on students as alumni. So when they go out into the world, how are they engaging with companies that are using AI and that might be helpful for us as folks trying to be on the forefront of teaching and learning around these things? Because as we know from Shopify's article, it's not a question if you're coming in with an understanding, but you really need to demonstrate your application of AI in work because that's going to be now an expected work skill that I know many of the community colleges are now embedding into their pedagogy because they understand that that work skill and that workforce development side of being AI ready and AI literate is so important in showing that return on investment in higher education.
Yeah, I think this is the moment for community colleges to really own this. I think community colleges can, from a workforce readiness side of things, just respond a lot faster to these changes. And we have certainly already seen community colleges lead in terms of being early adopters on the administration side. I think the same is absolutely going to be true on the teaching and learning side as well. Want to know what AI powered people focused really looks like? The 2025 Engage Summit will show you how AI transforms engagement without losing the human touch. Join us June 24th and 25th in Charlotte, North Carolina for actionable insights, hands on demos, and transformative strategies. Enrollify listeners save $50 with the code Enrollify50. Sign up at engage.element451.com. Now, you were mentioning, the students quite a bit in your response, right? And so let's talk about the students for a moment. I'm really curious if you're a lot closer to them than I am. So, how do they seem to be responding to AI being integrated within campuses? Have you heard anything on the streets? Are there trust issues here, or I guess my assumption is that students don't care as long as they get accurate information when they want it. But please, push back on that if that's not what you're hearing.
Yeah, I think there's a range like anything else, Mallory, related to this with students. I think if you're looking at the past cycle of admissions and financial aid and the lack of timely responses, I would say not because faculty and staff don't want to, it's just a workload issue, as we've talked about before.
Absolutely.
I think they are willing and interested in learning as long as an institution is transparent about how they're using AI or these nudges are coming from a bot, like identifying that it's a bot, not an actual human. They're fine with it because they've grown up with this. And many of us now, I shouldn't say they've grown up with it, but given our experiences online shopping and doing the things that we do, I feel like we've experienced that in other ways outside of education that now are starting to trickle into the education space. I know that still a top concern among students is around privacy and how their data is being used. I think as you look at community colleges and the student and the wide range in ages and experiences that students at community colleges bring, I think there's a little more sophistication in the questions that community college students are asking around how we're using AI as an institution because they're older. They may also be working and they're in that space. And so they're more mindful of asking those types of questions. I know that when we were piloting things in AI at Curry, students were appreciative that we were upfront with, Alex is a chatbot, AI chatbot, leveraging a knowledge base of information, and that bot's role is to refer you to other folks at the college who will be reaching out to you as a result of your engagement. And I think if folks take that approach and involve students in the process of planning and execution, I think that there's a lot to be gained. I think we often wait till the end of a planning process to say, here's what we've developed. What do you think? Let's have them in the front end, whether it's
Yes.
through SGA or whether it's through student organizations or specific governance mechanisms that exist at your institution. But students are very informed. They are just they have this expectation that as a student and as and I don't want to say a customer because some of my colleagues push back when I use that term, but as the folks paying the bill to go with the
Hmm.
instances, they should be factored into the data gathering and the feedback loops that I think we're already doing for staff and faculty who are managing the process on the back end. But now the students need to be really at the forefront of that process.
Yes, everyone listening needs to clip the last minute of what you just said and send that all the way up the chain. I mean, that's it. You need to be transparent first and foremost, and you need to actually involve students in this planning process, like you said at the beginning. I think those are two very clear takeaways from this conversation for our listeners. So I've got one more question for you, Ed. Let's flip it back to the staff side of things because you are a cabinet level leader on these college campuses. So let's place you within the teams that you're leading. What does it actually look like to manage an AI teammate? And do you think that this rise of agentic AI is going to change how we structure our teams and set them up for success?
I think it's much like our onboarding processes now. We will treat agentic AI staff as another staff member. We'll welcome them. They'll introduce them to the culture and the organizational charts that exist. We'll have to, in more of a prescriptive way, talk about the culture and where and how things have operated. And I think it's going to force a lot of difficult conversations around unspoken rules and invisible structures that exist at institutions around how decisions are made and at what point are things elevated to senior leadership. So I think making sure that we're clear in our scope, number one, Mallory, to say AI agent bot number one or AI agent Mallory, this is your scope of work. This is what you're going to be responsible for. And these are the parameters we're asking you to live in. We're going to set some KPIs because we're going to be data informed about this. How accurate are your responses? How many students have you helped in the last month during peak period? How do they feel about engaging with you? We're going to do surveys along to make sure that students have a chance to weigh in on that. That will create that, I would say, iterative process for improvement so that we continuously are using that data to help that agentic AI bot be better. I think that agent needs to meet on a regular basis with
Yes.
a cross-functional group of IT folks, of student affairs folks, of academic affairs folks. I think there should be some leadership structure around this to ensure a cross-collaborative approach to the implementation and improvement of this agent is going to exist at your institution. And then I think you got to build in all the other challenges that I know will be pushbacks, ethical guardrails, privacy, the policy underpinning all of this to ensure that we are standing by this with a clear policy and procedure that holds us accountable to a standard that then would, I think, best serve the students and the community.
I just wonder how long it's going to be until the internal memo from a college president leaks with a similar message like that Shopify CEO. And it has been such a pleasure catching up with you and kind of digging into this future AI teammate. Listeners, next week, spoiler alert, we're going to double click on what students think about all of this. I'm bringing in two incredible guests who have some hard data to back up. It's not just what we think they are saying and feeling, but actually the data that is going to tell us what they're saying and feeling. So look forward to that episode. And before we wrap up today, any parting thoughts for our listeners?
No, and just again, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing from my colleagues as to how they're moving this important agenda item forward on their campuses, given where higher education is now and where it's heading. And I think building that community of practice, I think will be important to help all of us make sure we're using these tools in the best way possible.
Amazing. Well, listeners, if you've been with us for the last month, you know that the format of these shows have changed a little bit. We've done 4 or 5 of them now, and I'm super curious to hear from you. What do you think about this new format? We're bringing guests on, we're tightening up these episodes, and we're trying to give you the things that are going to be most important as you walk into that next staff meeting. Are we achieving what we have set out to do? Find me on LinkedIn, rate, subscribe, leave a message. I can't wait to hear from you. Thanks so much, everyone. We're wrapping this one up, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.